getting into the book. This is where we get into it. This is where we crack the book open.
This is the meat. Oh, hold on. We haven't cracked it yet?
Keep them closed.
Okay. You ready?
Start with the books closed.
The book is closed.
And that was dramatic.
That was dramatic. I felt good about it.
All right.
So, step 1. Week 1, take 3.
Now there's too many numbers.
Okay, do you want to start over?
All right.
Step 1.
Step 1.
Cool.
Here we are.
Here we are at step 1.
Okay, we should begin right at the beginning. You know what I learned is that I hear there's a lot of promises in this big book, and I don't know how many. I know that there's people that are out there that have counted the number of promises in this book, but there's more than just the promises that I see that are listed on the wall. The book is just chock full of promises.
Well, I think the title page opens up with one pretty cool one.
What is it? What do we have on the title? So if you open up your book and right on the title page, it looks like this one.
Not even
right
a
here.
number on the page. So title page, name of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. It says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism.
So to me, a promise is anything that gives me a little bit of hope.
Okay.
And when I first crack this book open and I see this is the story, this is a document, this is the account of how many thousands, and this was back when this printing was thousands, now it's millions, but many thousands of men and women have recovered. Recovered. They use that word recovered. So this is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism.
That is a lot of hope.
So, yeah, it gives me hope because that's what I want to do. I want to recover from this situation, this alcoholism, this thing that I'm dealing with. And so if I look at that, this is the story of how they recovered, and I want that. And so that gives me a little bit of hope. Right there, page 1, first thing I look at. I also like to look at the table of contents. So if you look at your table of contents in your book, we've got all the forewords, we have the doctor's opinion, and then we have the 11 chapters, and then we have the personal stories. And that's the layout, that's the basic layout of the book. And you know what? When I first got this book and they told me to read it, I skipped past all this stuff, and I skipped all the forewords and the doctor's opinion. I skipped everything because I didn't want to waste my time reading all the nonsense.
Yeah,
is
you
what
wanted,
I thought.
You wanted to get to the climax of it.
I wanted
figure it out.
I'm the kind of person that skips way to the end of the story.
No one needs the beginning.
No, right?
When you first got sober. When you got sober this time, because had you been in and out of the program?
Number of times. Many times.
When you got sober this time,
and
you got a sponsor, were you told, read the first 164 and come back to me?
That's what they told me to do.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so you went to what?
And so I
163?
No, not quite. I did skip all the beginning stuff. I skipped all the chunks of knowledge and information that's in the beginning.
Okay.
And the thing is I missed out on that. And they put this doctor's opinion in there, and I feel like they put that in there in the beginning because it's really important that I read that first. And it's really, to me, it makes sense. I don't know. I wasn't there when they wrote this thing, but I imagine that they put the doctor's opinion there because it's important for me to understand what a doctor's opinion on alcoholism is. And he's not an alcoholic, but he's seen and worked with a lot of alcoholics.
So to find out what it is we need to recover from.
I mean, how do I admit that I'm an alcoholic unless I know what an alcoholic is? So the authors spend quite a bit of time. In fact, they, if I really want to break it down, and there's different ways to look at this, but we've got the doctor's opinion, which is about 7 pages. We have Bill's story. There's a solution, and more about alcoholism. So the first 3 chapters plus the doctor's opinion, that's about 51 pages, right? 51 pages, and the instructions. They told me this, and if you look at it, the instructions for taking all 12 steps are really contained in the first 103 pages, right? Because then we've got 2 wives, the family afterward, 2 employers, and a vision for you. But if I look at the section of the book that contains the instructions for taking the 12 steps, that's 103 pages.
So the first 51 pages are dedicated to step 1.
So 51 out of 103.
That's nearly half.
That's nearly half. So
it must be important.
It must be kind of important.
It has to
that
be.
we look at that. So that's why we spend we're going to spend a lot of time talking about step 1.
Cool.
But I think it's critical because I can't, again, like I said, if I don't know what it means to be an alcoholic, how do I even admit that that's me? How do I say that's me? Because people, for years, when I went to treatment and when I went to detox and I went out all these places,
You're an alcoholic.
They told me, right?
Yeah.
They told me I was an alcoholic, and I had a lot of people say, and so I said, I guess I'm an alcoholic.
Well, I know for me, I threw myself into the classification of an alcoholic for a lot of years without any knowledge of my condition.
Right.
It was just, I keep doing whatever it was.
Yeah.
I must be an alcoholic.
Right.
But I have zero knowledge of my condition.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically, sitting down with a good friend of mine who had sat down with me a lot. And, these many interventions.
Yeah.
And he asked me one time, he said, what is it in your head or whatever
Yeah.
that makes you do what you keep doing?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, my answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was the truth.
And it's honest.
You know, because I could tell a bunch of people at the bar or, you know, guys
Mm-hmm.
you met on the street or whatever that I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And if they asked me what one was, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know was my best answer.
So it's probably a good idea for us to find out what the book
Sure.
and what the authors define an alcoholic as. Because
I think that's a
I
great
need to know what that is so that I can say, yes, that's me, or no, that's not me. Because if that's not me, it's important to know that also. I'm not going to waste my time
If
here
you're
in
not
AA.
one, why continue?
Yeah, why keep moving on if
Yeah.
you're not if you don't qualify or if you're not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So okay. So the first thing that I like to look at, all this stuff now. There's so much great information in this book. We would have a 57 episode. Well, we could do that and go through every single
I
page.
have all the time in the world right
I
now.
don't. I've got stuff to do.
Do you have to go right now?
In a few minutes.
Okay.
We got to wrap this up.
Well, and I mean, like I said, getting into this book and reading it, you know, continuously, I'm constantly getting stuff out of it.
Yeah.
Going through the way that this workshop is
Yeah.
sort of chopped up, we're going to miss some awesome stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we're not going to get the knowledge of what step 1, 2, 3,
Right.
and on is from. So
Right.
there's a ton of good stuff that we're not going to read in here,
Yeah.
but the stuff that we are going to read is really rad.
It really is. We're
Yeah.
gonna hit the bullet points, and a good thing to do is if you want, you know, if this is just a video, you could always pause in between the video and read the whole chapter that we're in.
You could.
I would encourage other people to do that. But we'll start in the doctor's opinion,
Sure.
which is the doctor's opinion actually is. It starts on page XXV, and listen, I'm no expert on AA, but I've read a few things and I've heard a few things. So and here's the thing: I've noticed that in AA, you know, if you have an opinion or if you say something about something, there's always somebody out there that's got a different opinion.
I disagree.
Okay, so there is an example. So there's there's going to be a variety of opinions. So some of this stuff, and we'll try to clarify as we go through this. What is
I'll definitely say some things that are wrong. But I don't think you will.
Yeah.
I'll ride your coattails.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
But there's, who's to say what's wrong or right? There's some
The
things
doctor.
that we're going to say, the doctor. So
Yeah.
it's his opinion. So some things are going to be my opinion that we share. Some things are my experience. I'll try to be clear on the difference between whether I'm talking about my opinion, my experience, or something that's direct quote out of the book.
Sure.
So
Start right at the top.
let's start. Well, so having said that, the doctor's opinion here is he's a doctor. The history, my understanding of the history here is that this is from Dr. William Silkworth, who was Bill W.'s doctor, and he was a doctor that dealt with hopeless alcoholics. He worked in Towns Hospital, and he dealt with alcoholics on a regular basis. And there was all these guys coming in, and there was no AA really at the time. There were a few things, and they would dry out in the hospital, and he would watch them come in and out and in and out. And none of these guys really had any kind of permanent sobriety.
Yeah.
And then
I wonder what the average length of sobriety was after going in to see Silkworth and coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I know he saw a revolving door.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
guys, of the same guys.
Right.
You know?
They'd come out and they'd say,
With no
"Okay,
solution.
I'm this is good. I'm sober. I'm clean. I got a couple days. I think I can do this." And they'd go out and they'd look like they were going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Ever experienced that?
yes, story of my life.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
I did. I sobered up a lot of times. There was a time when I had a job in a bar.
You had a job?
Yeah, well, it was a very short period of my
Okay.
life, but I did have a job. I got a new job in a bar, right?
Okay.
And I had just lost the last job as a result of drinking.
What?
And surprise, and I everything kind of fell apart, and I got a new job in a bar, and I remember saying to myself, "This is where I get my new fresh, clean start. I'm going to sober up at this bar."
Yeah.
I'm gonna to me that made sense. That made a lot of sense.
It does make sense.
I'm gonna go to work at this bar. I'm gonna stay clean and sober. And
Well, who's ever gotten drunk in a bar? So I can understand your justification.
good point.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, that didn't work. It did last a little while. I
Really?
felt like I would go to work and I'd be like, look at these drunks out here, and I was so much.
You don't work at the bar anymore.
It's been a while. No.
Okay.
that was quite some time
That's
ago.
probably a good thing.
So back to the doctor's opinion. It's 2 letters. So Bill Wilson, after he gets sober, so he comes through and he becomes friends with Dr. Silkworth, and Dr. Silkworth sees Bill stay sober. They stay in touch. Bill has a spiritual experience, and so they talk back and forth. And they ask him, when they write this book, they ask this doctor to give his medical opinion. Now, keep in mind, this is a medical opinion in the late 30s, right? And so this is his medical opinion back then of what an alcoholic is. So he describes, and he had a lot of experience with alcoholics.
So we're going to start in the doctor's opinion in the second letter, on the last sentence of the second letter on page XXVII.
Okay.
27.
Roman numeral 27.
27. It said, of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor. And this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit.
Okay. All right. So the doctor says here that the alcoholic needs to be freed from his physical craving for liquor. And this is where he starts to mention this physical craving. Right, and this is important because what we're going to talk about here and what we're going to learn about in step 1 is the physical and the mental sides of alcoholism. So the doctor starts off talking about a physical craving for liquor, and it's important because it's going to come up a number of times here. And then what does he say? He says this often requires a definite hospital procedure. Do I even need to go to the hospital?
I think
every time I got.
So written in the 30s, the hospital procedure back then is probably different than now. Okay. I would think.
Okay.
So now, like a detox procedure.
Yeah.
Checking into detox.
Right.
Getting, drugs and alcohol out of your system.
Okay.
Before this can be of maximum benefit.
Right. So before psychological, meaning having to do with the mind, before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit, right?
So there might be a minimum benefit if you're loaded.
That's true. Good point. Well, have you ever tried to work with somebody who's loaded? You ever tried to work with
Very
somebody?
Tough.
Yeah.
Very tough.
It is tough. I don't know. I have had that experience. But so the doctor says we need to be physically separated from our physical craving for liquor and before we get into the psychological. Right?
That makes sense.
Next paragraph.
We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy.
Okay, that's an interesting word that he uses right there.
Allergy?
Yeah. So the doctor is saying that it's the manifestation of an allergy, and so does that mean we're allergic to alcohol?
It must.
I mean, it's an interesting thing that he uses there, because when I think about the word allergy, I think about somebody who's got like an allergy to strawberries or an allergy to peanuts, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody who has an allergic reaction.
What would be an allergy, like an abnormal reaction?
An abnormal reaction to a normal, because I can eat strawberries, right?
Can you?
All day long.
Do you have any?
I do. You want to stop this and go eat some?
No, I don't think it's strawberry season.
Okay.
I wish you did.
All right.
If you were allergic to strawberries,
yes,
which you say you're not,
right?
But I know people that are. They eat them, they break out into hives,
right,
or something like that.
So they have an abnormal reaction to strawberries, and that's a normal substance or a normal food. I can eat that. You can eat that, as far as I know, and I have no problem. I have no reaction. But a person that has an allergy to strawberries has an abnormal reaction. Same thing with peanuts or other substances. So that's what he's talking about here is an allergy, the manifestation of an allergy, which means that there's some kind of an abnormal reaction that happens with alcoholics when we put alcohol into our system. I think that's what he's talking about right there.
Okay.
So what kind of a reaction does an alcoholic have? Do I break out in hives?
It's possible.
Okay.
I think we should read on.
Well, let's read on.
It says that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
That's a really interesting thing. So the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So the phenomenon of craving, maybe that's the abnormal reaction, is this phenomenon of craving. Because if it never occurs in the average temperate drinker, meaning a normal person can drink alcohol and they never experience this phenomenon of craving, right?
And I know I've heard it said, it's called the phenomenon of craving because they just really don't know why.
Yeah,
why someone has this phenomenon of craving and someone doesn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say, either here or there.
Right.
And this phenomenon of craving, the physical reaction when I put alcohol into my body, only happens in alcoholics.
Only happens to alcoholics.
Yeah.
So if it happens every time I drink, I'm an alcoholic. What if it happens most of the time or some of the times when I put alcohol in my system?
It never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Never.
So a normal person never experiences this phenomenon of craving.
That's what this book
Alcoholics are the only ones that experience this this phenomenon. That's an interesting thing because I had this experience where I went to a wedding and I had a glass of champagne.
Did you?
I did.
That's very fancy.
Very well. It was a fancy wedding. So I went to it was I don't know what I was doing there, and I come to think of it, I think I crashed it. So I was at this wedding, a fancy wedding, and I had a glass of champagne, and that's it. I didn't have more champagne after that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think about that, and I think, and for years, and that was years before I got sober, and I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not an alcoholic because I had that
Well, you
glass
must
of
not be.
champagne. I must not be an alcoholic because I had that glass of champagne, and I didn't have more. The phenomenon of craving didn't take hold and cause me to drink more.
So that one time.
That one time. Right. So it was that one time.
You're good.
Pretty much every other time, the phenomenon of craving took over. But I kept thinking about it. Was like 10 years later, and I was still drinking. And I'd be like, there was that one time that I had that glass of
Do
champagne.
you remember the champagne?
Remember the champagne? I'm clearly not an alcoholic.
No, you must not be.
Yes.
Because of the one glass.
But if I read this, I can look at this and it says it never occurs in the
Never.
average temperate drinker. So alcoholics experience it some of the time, most of the time, all of the time.
Yeah.
Right? But normal people never experience this phenomenon of craving. What even is, because he talks about the alcoholic needs to be physically separated from his craving, right? So he's talking about it's a physical craving.
So you wouldn't get the craving unless booze was in your body.
Unless so that's the allergy. I put alcohol into my system, and then the craving kicks off. Then I experience that abnormal reaction.
That phenomenon of craving.
That's what he's talking about, I think, when he uses the word allergy, is that
Okay.
the abnormal reaction that I experience is this craving starts. So pick up where we left off. The phenomenon of craving is limited to this class, never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and they become astonishingly difficult to solve.
That's a great description of what my life was like just before I got sober. Is I've had this habit, I couldn't break it. I lost my self-confidence and my reliance upon things human because I relied on people, I relied on myself even. And all of a sudden I found I couldn't do that anymore.
Problems piling up and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve
Right.
is wording that I can feel.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I just, when you're in it, I need 12 things to go right.
Yeah.
9 of them are impossible. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
3 of them are highly unlikely.
Yeah.
And I'm relying on this craziness and like
Yeah.
it says, my problems are piling up. They become astonishingly
Right.
difficult to solve. And I think
Right.
reading that and asking yourself the questions going through it is you get drawn to hopeless.
Yeah. And that's where we're going with this. And you bring up a really good point, is that as I read through this book, what I'm doing is I'm asking myself, is this me? Do I experience this? So I'm asking myself, have I experienced this phenomenon of craving? Right? I ask myself, and so that's a good thing. Ask yourself if you've experienced the phenomenon of craving. Ask yourself if this is what's happening to you. Have you formed the habit? You found you cannot break it. Have you lost your reliance upon things human? Have your problems started to pile up on you and become astonishingly difficult to solve? Right? There might be people out there that say, yeah, that's me.
And some, I've had people say no.
Yeah.
That this is not them.
Right.
So, but definitely when I was going through this and my sponsor was taking me through the doctor's opinion and we were reading these and I read that, like I said, I could feel that.
Yeah.
I could feel that. And
Yeah.
as I'm going through my first step,
Yeah.
my problems had piled up and they seemed astonishingly difficult to solve
Yeah.
while I was in my first step.
Right. Yeah. Step one's not a great place to be, for me anyway.
It's a little scary.
It sucked.
It's a little scary.
It sucked.
It gets better.
It took a while, but yeah.
It took a while.
Did
yeah.
I mention that I took a long time to get through my steps?
You did.
I struggled.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it.
No,
I prolonged my suffering.
you did.
Not
Your
recommended.
problems became astonishingly difficult to solve due
And
to
they-
prolonging.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they stayed astonishingly difficult to solve because it took me for me it was months to get through my steps.
Yeah.
Right? And some people do. Some people take months. And I've seen people, I think you got through rather quickly.
About 2.5 months.
2.5 months.
2.5 months. My sponsor went on a vacation to
The
Hawaii
expert
for 2
over here
weeks.
gets through all.
No,
Oh.
my sponsor went on a vacation to Hawaii for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Boy, I didn't.
Did you get drunk when you went on there?
I didn't.
Huh.
I didn't.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your recovery did not depend upon your sponsor?
No.
That's a good thing.
But
Okay.
I'm very grateful for him.
So let's go all the way down to the last paragraph on
Last paragraph.
on
It
the page.
says, "Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol."
I loved the effect produced by alcohol.
Yeah.
I loved it. I'll tell you the truth, honestly.
Will you?
If I wasn't an alcoholic, I would be drunk every day. I love it so much.
A couple of months after I got sober, a buddy
Yeah.
of mine who was a drinking buddy, I've known him
Yeah.
for 20 years. And
Yeah.
He's very happy I'm sober.
Uh-huh.
But he said to me, he said, one of the last times I went out with you, you said specifically to me, if I could drink and get drunk every single day with zero repercussions and not spend any money, I would.
I'll take it.
So that's reasonable.
I'll take it. That's very reasonable.
So that makes that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
Right.
And I can put a check mark on that.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, definitely.
So then they say the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, while they admit it sucks, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And here's a big one for me. I have this one like highlighted and underlined. It says, talking about us alcoholics, it says they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. And
I love reading that. I love the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious. And so I'm, I like definitions of things. So inflicting injury.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know this will be bad.
I know,
but it's so elusive, And so I go out with full knowledge that it's injurious to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And that's scary to read.
I know this is not going to go well, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I tell myself, most of the time I tell myself it's not going to go. But this is a great description of me when I'm not drinking. Okay. It's miserable. It's miserable.
Without being drunk.
When I have I got to have something. I got to have, if I don't have alcohol or this program and my higher power, if I have neither of those, it show's over. It's an absolute misery.
You ever been in that position?
Multiple times, and it's
tough.
The worst.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
No solution on either end.
You know what happens? I'm restless, irritable, and discontent.
That's what they just talked about.
Well, that's what happened to me. I was restless, irritable. I was miserable, right? And so that's what would happen is I had no solution, and here I am without any alcohol, no drugs, no solution. I gotta do something. I'm restless, man. I gotta do something. I'm not content. It sucks.
That is living that way, being restless, being irritable, and being discontented. It's nothing is good enough at that point. There's no show on TV that I can watch. Everything anybody says to me is the worst thing I've ever heard. It just makes me furious. Right at the top of XXIX.
Okay.
So 29, it says the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity.
Those are the non-alcoholics, right? I see these other people I see at the bar, right? And they look like this guy's drinking. He's okay.
So this might be the guy that goes to the bar after work, has 3 beers, and goes home.
Yes, that's me. I was that guy.
Were you?
Well, I went home and drank after that.
Oh, okay. But he goes home and does it.
Okay, that's a different guy.
So he's others.
Yeah.
Okay. So drinks they see others taking with impunity.
Right.
After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again.
This is interesting because he says after they have succumbed to the desire. So I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. I'm miserable. I'm sober, but I'm miserable, right? And I have all this stuff. And then after I give in to the desire, after I say, okay, I can't handle it anymore, I give in, then I take a drink, then the phenomenon of craving develops. So there's another example of the craving happens after I put the alcohol. So I could be sober a couple days, maybe a couple weeks or months, right? And I just can't handle it anymore. And it's my mind, it's the mental, right? That
so
gets
after
me.
they have succumbed to the desire, so that desire is that mental obsession.
There it is. It's that mental obsession. It's this desire, right? And it's tough because the word craving gets thrown around a lot of different ways. Sure. And even Dr. Bob uses the word craving a lot, and he says he had cravings for years, Yeah. But according to the doctor here, this craving, this phenomenon of craving that he's talking to, happens after I put alcohol into my system.
As so many do.
Right?
The phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery.
So it sounds like they're saying, I'm going to keep on doing this. I'm going to continue to do this over and over again, and unless I experience what he calls an entire psychic change, there's little hope. So there's little hope for me.
So not just a tiny touch of a psychic change.
No, an entire.
So
I need to have a...
What do you think they mean by a psychic change?
ESP.
That's what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
A psychic change. I need to develop the power to read... Is that what they're talking about?
To read minds?
You think?
I don't think so.
No.
I think they're just talking about your way of thinking.
What does the word psychic mean?
Psychic?
I thought it meant a guy who can read minds.
It is, well, I think it does mean that, but I don't
Yeah.
think that that's what they're talking about here.
All right, I actually looked it up, and there's a couple.
What's it mean?
There's a couple definitions for the word psychic,
Okay.
and one of them is the guy that reads minds. But
Okay.
then after you look on, there's a couple, and psychic means having to do with the mind.
Okay.
So having to do a change in my way of thinking, an entire change, psychic, mental, an entire mental change. I think is what he's referring to, and unless I have an entire change in my thinking,
There's very little hope of your recovery.
there's no hope for me, or there's very little hope.
Very little hope.
This is starting to sound hopeless.
Oh.
Yeah.
Step one is pretty hopeless.
It sucks.
Step one.
Yep.
We're kind of screwed.
Step one is
Well, let's trudge on.
okay.
Let's trudge on. Where
All right.
to?
Okay, so let's go down. So the doctor goes on. In that very next paragraph, the doctor says, "On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules." Okay,
Simple rules.
what do you think he's talking about?
A few simple rules, maybe step work.
Probably
The 12
steps.
steps.
Probably, right?
And I think that simplicity saves us. It says a few simple rules.
Simple rules,
Yeah.
right? Simple but not easy.
Sure.
So then the next paragraph, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, "Doctor, I cannot go on like this." This sounds like how I felt. "Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me." Can you relate to that feeling?
You know, and it's funny because you go through this book, and especially when I first got sober, I'm kind of looking for differences because that's just the way I'm
You're right,
programmed.
right.
I have not had an entire second
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
I'm looking for differences, so I can go through this and think, well, I've never
Uh-huh.
had this conversation with a doctor.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the doctor's opinion to a buddy of mine the other day, and he said, you know, I've never had that conversation with a doctor. I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. He said, but I've had it in the mirror.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Oh,
What
he
are you
didn't have
doing?
it with the exact doctor.
No,
so he's,
but you know what I mean? But he's had
Right.
this conversation. I can't go
Right.
on like this. I have
Yeah.
everything to live for. I must stop, but
That's
I can't.
it. Yeah.
So I've had this conversation to myself
Right.
1,000 times.
That's the feeling. That's how I felt. Is I got to stop, but I can't.
Yeah.
Right? That's what this thing is for. It's for people who, I've got to stop. I've got to quit. I can't do it.
And they just keep doing this over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's almost step one right there. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it is. That's what step one is all about. Is I've got to stop, but I cannot. You must help me. And then he goes on to say in the next paragraph, faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. And then he says something really important here. He says, one feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change.
There's a little foreshadowing there.
A little bit, right?
Yep.
So there he's saying, what is he? Something more than human power.
So, and I kind of like that. He's faced with this problem. If a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. So he's got this guy that's coming in here saying, I can't go on like this. And obviously he's a return customer. I can't go on like this. I have
Yeah.
everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. And even the doctor himself is saying he feels his own inadequacy as a doctor.
Yeah.
And he tells the guy, you know, one feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the entire site.
Right. Because the doctor's a human being. He can't do it.
No.
I'm not able to do it. And he realized that when he's seeing all these guys in and out, he's saying, I can't, there's nothing I can do either.
Way beyond human aid.
Right. So
Yeah.
what a crappy position to be in is here's a guy that comes in, you got to help me. I can't do it. And the doctor's like, I can't do it either.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a guy, what hope do you have, right? So he says you feel like something more than human power is needed. And then there's that psychic change again. Now he's referring to it as an essential psychic change.
So something more than human power is needed
Right.
to produce this essential psychic change.
So if I'm a hopeless alcoholic, I have little hope unless I have this psychic change. I have to have this in order to recover, and in order to get this and experience this, I need something more than human power to produce that.
It's getting exciting.
It is getting exciting
And scary.
A
I
little
remember,
bit.
going through this, the first time that I was going through and actually doing it,
Yeah.
this stuff is kind of freaky.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? But once you get to the point, like we read over here on the other side, and my problems are becoming astonishingly difficult to solve,
Yeah.
and all this stuff, I'm hopeless. I'm desperate.
Yeah.
I'm ready to listen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And if it's going to take something more than human power, I'm a little interested.
Well, I'm open.
I'm open.
Right
You know
at
what I
this
mean?
point. Yeah.
But still scared.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the last paragraph.
Last
on
paragraph.
the page.
It says, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I've had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met.
So this is an interesting thing the doctor talks about right here. And I want to go back a little bit and look at that, because he's talking about, he's had this many times, many men who have worked for a period of months on there's a really important thing, and I relate to this. So you got a really important thing to do the next day, right? And he says they took a drink.
Yeah.
They took a drink. So, if I go out and I think I got a really major thing to do tomorrow, I can't get drunk. I know I can't screw this up. If I go out and get drunk, this is going to be a disaster. But I'll just have one drink. A drink.
Sure.
I'll just have a drink, maybe to calm my nerves, whatever.
And the phenomenon of craving kicks in.
There's no thought of having multiple drinks. The thought of I gotta have just one or two, and then I'm out, right? And then exactly like you said, then the phenomenon of craving, because that's what he says. He says they took a drink, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests. Paramount to all other interests, because it says this is the most important thing, and then they lose it. The important appointment was not met.
And I like going through this, because if I'm, like I said, if I'm looking for things that I can't relate to, I can pick this apart, right?
Yeah.
I can go through and, I've never had any business deal which to be settled on a certain date favorably to me. I never have. But what I love about this is that I've had things that I've missed.
Right.
Even if it's a crappy job
Yeah.
or a good job,
Yeah.
or I've told someone I'm going to be somewhere,
Yeah.
and I take a drink,
Yep.
and it starts,
Yep.
and I go off. So
Yeah.
here's this business guy, and here's a guy that's not a business guy,
Right.
which it doesn't matter. Alcoholism is not about the drama of drinking; it's about what happens.
Right.
My inner experience when I
Yeah.
put alcohol into my body, a drink, and I'm gone.
And that's it.
And I'm gone. So
Right.
my business deals were never favorably to me because I didn't have any.
Didn't have any
but I
business
missed a
deals.
lot of crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I'm sure you did too.
Oh, I had so many business deals.
So were they
I know.
favorable to you?
None of them were favorable.
Yeah.
All right, I never had any business deals.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
you worked at that bar.
Not back then. Well, I didn't have a lot of. I had bar business.
We're at the top of XXX. It says these men were not drinking to escape; they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control.
Okay, so that's interesting. The doctor says that they're drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. So I don't have the mental ability to overcome this this thing. Once I put this into my body, I can't think my way out of it. Once I start drinking, that phenomenon of craving develops, and now it's beyond my mental control.
So they're not drinking to escape.
Right.
Once this craving's inside of them, it's
Yeah.
beyond. You can't think yourself out of stopping.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what seems so strange to people that aren't alcoholics that don't understand. They're like, why don't you just go home? Why don't you just stop? Right? I would go to the bar and I would say, to me it even seemed crazy. I would go to the bar and I would say, I want to go home at midnight, right? And then midnight would come and I'm like, nope.
I did a thing towards the end of my drinking where I would go to the bar with a Sharpie in my pocket.
Yeah.
And it was 10 drinks and I'm gone.
Yeah.
And it's funny because
10.
I told my mom about that. She's like, 10, But
Great
I was
limit.
10 drinks and I'm gone. So I would mark them on.
Yeah.
And then, it would, which I didn't know at the time, but this phenomenon of craving would start.
Yeah.
I'd start marking them. I'd get one over here. Did I mark that?
Yeah.
Whatever, screw the Sharpie. You know what I mean? So, like a couple of scribbles on the arm, and next 3 days later, you know what I mean? It's all gone. But that was my plan. It was beyond. That was going to be my mental control.
Yeah.
To drink 10 and go
Right.
home.
You were all these efforts to control it.
Yeah.
Right. And
I thought it was a
but
great
you weren't
idea.
able to once you start drinking.
No.
The craving kicks off.
No.
And I would have loved to have been there at the bar and see this guy with like 3 or 4 really clean lines, and then there's sloppier, and then there's maybe one all.
Well, and never once did I go and mark number 10 and say, check, please. You know what I mean? It never worked. It never worked.
Right.
Because once I get in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that would be
Yeah.
that would fall into the category of like what we read.
Uh-huh.
Well-known stages of a spree.
Yeah.
A lot of my sprees started with this foolish Sharpie business. You know what I mean? And so 3 days later, and
There's got to be somebody out there who's been in a bar. Here's the Sharpie guy again.
I don't know. I'd tell you the bar I went to. There's some people that saw me there.
I know that bar. Okay, so then the doctor, he goes on and he talks about the different types of alcoholics. So we're going to talk about the different types of drinkers later, but right now he's talking about different types of alcoholics. And once he talks about this, we're actually going to skip down to 1, 2,
4?
3, paragraph 5.
Paragraph
on page,
5.
Trip on page XXX. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, I can't
go
count.
to 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's paragraph 5.
Is
Right
it?
there.
Okay.
All these.
All these. Okay. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving.
So there it is. All those different types of alcoholics that he talks about, right? The same thing for all of them is true. Once you start drinking, the phenomenon of craving develops. That allergy, right? The normal people don't experience. That craving kicks off. They never experience that phenomenon of craving. But with us, just like every other alcoholic out there, once I start drinking, the phenomenon of craving develops, right? And then he says,
this phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
So it sounds like the only way that I'll avoid this phenomenon of craving, the only way I can avoid having this allergy getting kicked off is to never put the alcohol into my system.
And that would be the entire abstinence.
That's entire abstinence, right?
And I like that. It has never been, by any treatment with which we're familiar, permanently eradicated. So there's nothing that he's found as a doctor or seen anywhere else where alcoholism can get permanently eradicated from your body.
Right. So in
other words,
we're
never cured.
We're never cured. He says if you have this allergy, you're always going to have this allergy. If you have this abnormal reaction, for the rest of your life, you'll always be an alcoholic.
But you can get relief from it. With entire abstinence.
Entire abstinence. So I won't have to suffer from the allergy. It's like strawberries. Back to strawberries again.
If you don't eat them.
I'll never have that allergy that gets kicked off. I'll never break out in hives.
And if I never drink,
I'll never kick off that allergy and have
then
that
the phenomenon of craving won't be in there.
So then it sounds like I won't have to deal with the physical, which is beyond my mental control. What I have to deal with is the mental side of the thing, mental obsession, right? That's what we're dealing with. And that's why he talks about an entire psychic change, an entire change in the way of thinking. Because that's what this book addresses. I don't think this book has anything at all to do to help me with the physical. It just helps me with the mental obsession. Because once I start drinking, that's it, I'm done. Right?
Oh, it's over.
You ever try to stop once you start immediately, like after you have a couple drinks? You ever try to stop abruptly?
Stop abruptly?
Yeah, they tell us that later in the book.
I know. Oh, boy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've tried.
The time, and there's funny times too where I've drank and it's on day 5 of a tough one.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where you just can't anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I used to chalk those up, and I'm like, why stop? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But my body just physically couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
There's no sleep has been had.
That's the stopping point. For me, the stopping point is a pass out, right? A blackout, or it's or I just physically can't put it. Once I start putting in, it all keeps coming back out. I physically can't get more in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
Okay. So there it is. So there's the doctor's opinion, and that's what he has to say. And so we're going to get more into step 1, but we're going to stop the video here, and we'll get more into the rest of the book in the next.
So we'll be
video.
in Bill's story next time we get into it.
So we'll be in Bill's story. We'll see you there. That's a good point.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like the point?
I don't know. I have to see it.
Try a thumbs up. Let's do it again. We'll see you in Bill's story. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let's just say we'll see you in Bill's story.
We'll see you in Bill's story.
That feels kind of awkward too.